At 11:47 p.m. on September 28th, Jennifer Gledhill made a phone call that would seal her fate. But 6 days earlier, at midnight in her lover's home, she had already confessed to murder, her words recorded, her husband's body already buried in an unmarked grave. "He's not a person anymore," she said. The question isn't whether she killed Matthew Johnson, it's how everyone missed the warning signs. September 22nd, 2024, just after midnight, Jennifer Gledhill arrived at her lover's home in a state that would later be described as distraught. What she said next would become the cornerstone of a murder prosecution. She told him she had killed her husband, not in abstract terms, not as a fantasy, but as accomplished fact. Matthew Johnson was dead, she said, shot in the head while he slept in their Cottonwood Heights home. The man she was confessing to was someone she'd been having an affair with, someone who would later be identified in court documents only as a confidential informant. He noticed bruises on Jennifer's body during their conversation. When he asked about them, she explained with disturbing casualness that she had gotten them while burying her husband and cleaning the house of evidence. This wasn't a vague admission. Jennifer provided specific details. She had shot Matthew in the head. She had put his body into a rooftop storage container. She had slid it down the stairs of their home. She had loaded it into the back of their minivan. She had driven north and buried him in a shallow grave at a location she didn't specify. Then she had returned home and begun an extensive cleanup operation, bleaching walls, using carpet cleaning supplies throughout the master bedroom. Now, what makes this confession particularly damning is what happened next. The lover, terrified by what he had heard, made a decision that would prove crucial. He began recording their subsequent conversations. In one phone call, when he told Jennifer he was frightened by what she had told him, her response revealed a psychological state that prosecutors would later characterize as chilling. "Wow, if you think I could even hurt a fly," she said. Then, referring to Matthew, like he's not a person. He wasn't a person anymore. He wasn't Matt. The dehumanization was complete. But Jennifer went further. When asked if she would be afraid if the situation were reversed, she replied, "Not if I deserved it." Then came what prosecutors would later present as evidence of a disturbed mindset. "I always preached that I was like the Queen of Hearts in my past. Lives because I'm like off with their heads. I'm like, if we could just round up the scum of this earth and put them on an island or just kill them all, I could whip shape this country back to a good place." She asked her lover not to think of her as a monster, to remember who she was before she opened her mouth. But the damage was done. He had not only heard her confession, but recorded it. And crucially, this confession came before Matthew Johnson was officially reported missing. Jennifer was already referring to her husband in the past tense when, as far as anyone else knew, he was simply away. To understand how a midnight confession became necessary, we need to examine the life that preceded it. The Gledhill Johnson household in Cottonwood Heights represented, on its surface, a particular American dream. A $1 million home in an upscale Utah neighborhood. A respected military man, Matthew Johnson, 51, a member of the Utah National Guard's 19th Special Forces Group, a Green Beret with over a decade of service. A devoted mother, Jennifer Gledhill, 42, raising their 3 children, ages 11, 7, and 5. Matthew's fellow soldiers would later describe him as brilliant and reliable, someone you could always count on for answers. His friend Kevin Thompson, a retired Utah National Guardsman, knew Matthew as a dedicated soldier and father. Another friend, John Hash, had served with Matthew for 12 years. These were men who had seen Matthew in the most challenging circumstances, who trusted him with their lives. Jennifer, for her part, was known in the community as supportive and something of a homebody. She participated in homeschool groups and church activities. Neighbors would later struggle to reconcile the woman they thought they knew with the one who would be charged with murder. But this perfect surface had been cracking for months. On July 3, 2024, Jennifer had filed for divorce in Utah's 3rd District Court. The filing itself wasn't unusual. Many military marriages face strain. But what followed would reveal a relationship that had moved far beyond simple incompatibility. By August, the situation had deteriorated significantly. Jennifer filed for a temporary protective order against Matthew on August 21st, claiming she needed protection from her husband. The court initially granted a temporary order while it reviewed the evidence, but something crucial was happening behind the scenes. Matthew had become so concerned about his own safety that he had begun sleeping at a National Guard facility rather than in his own home. Text messages from this period paint a picture of financial stress and manipulation. Jennifer had texted her father on September 18th and 19th, asking for $13,000 in bank information. Whether this was to fund a new life with her lover or for other purposes remains unclear, but it suggests planning beyond the immediate crisis of her marriage. September 16th, 2024, would prove to be a date of fatal significance. On this day, 3rd District Commissioner Russell Minus examined the evidence Jennifer had presented for her protective order and made a decision that would haunt everyone involved. The commissioner found that the videos Jennifer had submitted actually showed her as unafraid and equally confrontational toward Matthew. Commissioner Minus's ruling was detailed and specific. He noted that text messages from Jennifer to Matthew were repeatedly berating, belittling, and demeaning, if not outright attempting to goad him into a violent response. The commissioner saw something that Jennifer perhaps hadn't intended to reveal, not a woman in fear for her safety, but someone actively engaged in psychological warfare with her spouse. The commissioner wrote something that now seems tragically prescient. The conduct of the parties over the past several months is representative of a highly dysfunctional marriage bringing out the worst in the parties, clearly suggestive that an action for divorce should have been filed long before reaching the current state of affairs. He dismissed the protective order, ruling that no abuse had occurred. The system had reviewed Jennifer's claims and found them wanting. She wasn't afraid enough to need protection, the court determined. In a sense, they were right. Jennifer wasn't afraid. But what the system failed to recognize was the danger she herself posed. This dismissal came just 4 days before Matthew Johnson would be dead. The court had looked at the evidence of a deteriorating marriage and seen mutual combat rather than one-sided abuse. They had seen Jennifer's lack of fear as evidence that she wasn't in danger. What they hadn't seen was that her lack of fear might indicate something far more ominous, that she had already decided on a solution to her marital problems that wouldn't require court intervention. September 20th, 2024, began like many other days in the Gledhill Johnson household, but it would end with a confrontation that would seal Matthew Johnson's fate. On this day, Matthew discovered the truth about his wife's affair. The exact mechanism of discovery isn't detailed in court documents, but witnesses would later report hearing a heated argument between the couple that night. According to Jennifer's later confession, Matthew confronted her directly. He yelled at her because he knew she had been sleeping with someone else. Years of marital problems, months of legal battles, weeks of sleeping separately, it all exploded into the open. The affair was the final betrayal in a marriage that had already seen too many. But Jennifer had already made preparations that suggested this confrontation wasn't entirely unexpected. She had arranged for their 3 children to stay at her parents' house that night. Thomas and Rosalie Gledhill, Jennifer's parents, both in their early 70s, had agreed to take the children. It was a Friday night, perhaps not unusual for grandparents to babysit, but in retrospect, it appears to be part of a calculated plan. The argument on September 20th was intense, but sometime after that confrontation, the house grew quiet. Matthew, exhausted from the emotional turmoil and perhaps feeling safer with Jennifer's anger spent, went to sleep in their master bedroom. He had no idea that his wife had moved beyond anger to something far more final. In the early hours of September 21st, 2024, as Matthew lay sleeping, completely vulnerable, completely unaware, Jennifer made a decision that would destroy multiple families forever. She took a handgun, specifically a 9mm weapon, and shot her husband in the head while he slept. The murder was only the beginning of Jennifer's plan. According to her confession, she then faced the practical problem of a dead body in her master bedroom. She put Matthew's body into a rooftop storage container, the kind used for luggage on long trips. She then slid it down the stairs of their home, a detail that would later match the bruising she showed her lover. She loaded the body into the back of their minivan. She also took Matthew's phone and smashed it, eliminating any ability to track his movements. She drove his truck to a nearby neighborhood, abandoning it blocks from their home to create the illusion that he had left on his own. Then she drove north with his body, following a route that would later be partially traced through her phone's GPS data, and buried him in a shallow grave. When she returned home, the real work began. She bleached the walls of the master bedroom. She used carpet cleaning supplies throughout the room. On September 24th, she ordered a new mattress to replace the blood-soaked one where Matthew had died. The mattress would be delivered just 2 days later. But Jennifer didn't work alone. On September 24th, her parents arrived at the house. What Thomas and Rosalie Gledhill did over the next 5 hours would later result in their own arrest on charges of obstruction of justice. Neighbors observed them at the house, initially claiming they were only there for less than an hour to pick up clothing. But investigation would reveal they had spent over 5 hours there. Rosalie had purchased the new mattress. She would later have her phone remotely reset, losing all data about her whereabouts during the cleanup period. When police eventually questioned Thomas about the master bedroom and alleged cleanup, he made a telling statement: "I did not go in where the incident happened." This inadvertent revelation of knowledge about a crime scene would become part of the evidence against him. During a later search of the parents' home, police would find a Glock 19X gun box wrapped in a child's onesie inside a plastic tote. The container matched the description of a gun Jennifer had shown to her lover on September 19th, just 2 days before the murder. By September 23rd, Matthew Johnson's absence had become noticeable. He failed to report for duty with the Utah National Guard, prompting his unit to begin searching for him. His fellow Green Berets knew this was completely out of character. Matthew was reliable, dedicated. He wouldn't simply not show up. Yet it would be 5 more days before Jennifer officially reported him missing. On September 28th, she called police with a story that would quickly unravel. She claimed Matthew had said he would be gone for a week and told her not to call him. But by this time, her lover had already made a decision that would crack the case wide open. On October 2nd, 2024, the confidential informant contacted police with the recordings of Jennifer's confession. He provided screenshots of text messages and the audio recordings where Jennifer had admitted to murder. Armed with this evidence, Cottonwood Heights police executed a search warrant on the Gledhill home. What they found corroborated the confession in damning detail. In the master bedroom, investigators discovered a large blood-stained spot in the carpet underneath the bed. Blood was also found on the bed frame slats. The house reeked of bleach, and there were reddish-brown spots on the walls, bed frame, and blinds. The mattress in the bedroom was brand new, just as Jennifer had described. GPS data from Jennifer's phone showed her movements on September 21st and 22nd. The data tracked her traveling to the location where Matthew's truck was found around 6 a.m. It later showed her journey north toward Davis County, consistent with her claim of burying the body there. But despite this evidence, despite knowing approximately where Jennifer had gone, Matthew Johnson's body remained missing. What followed would become one of the most extensive searches in recent Utah history. Over 70 volunteers, many of them Matthew's fellow National Guardsmen, would search mountainous and rural areas north and northwest of Cottonwood Heights. The search began in Davis and Weber counties in late 2024, then extended in early 2025 to Box Elder County, around Snowville near the Utah-Idaho border. Ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs were employed. The extensive efforts underscored the unique challenges of a no-body homicide investigation. As Jennifer Gledhill sat in the Salt Lake County Jail charged with 9 felonies including first-degree murder, another legal battle was brewing. Matthew Johnson had named Jennifer as the beneficiary on a $500,000 life insurance policy. Under normal circumstances, the money would go to the beneficiary upon proof of death. But these were far from normal circumstances. Utah, like most states, has what's known as a slayer rule, a legal principle that prevents killers from benefiting financially from their crimes. The insurance company, identified as either Prudential or Credential Life in various documents, petitioned the court to determine who should receive the money. If Jennifer were convicted, she would be disqualified from receiving the benefits. The children, already victims who had lost their father to murder and their mother to prison, stood to inherit their father's estate if their mother was convicted. But with the trial not scheduled until December 8, 2025, the insurance money remained in limbo. During her bail hearing, prosecutors revealed another disturbing element. Jennifer had told her lover that she would shoot herself before going to jail, demonstrating both desperation and potential for further violence. The judge denied bail, determining that Jennifer posed a risk to the community. Meanwhile, the search for Matthew's body continued. In recent court hearings, prosecutors revealed that a vehicle storage container had been found floating in water, containing Johnson's blood inside. This discovery provided additional physical evidence linking Jennifer to the crime, but Matthew's body still hadn't been recovered. As of now, Jennifer Gledhill maintains her innocence, having pleaded not guilty to all charges. Her parents, Thomas and Rosalie, face their own legal battles with 4 counts of obstruction of justice each. The 3 children are in the care of relatives and social services, their lives forever altered by their mother's alleged actions. Matthew Johnson's military friends continue their search efforts. As Kevin Thompson, Matthew's longtime friend, said, "The fact that the search is now in its 5th month keeps them up at night." John Hash, who served with Matthew for 12 years and had welcomed the Gledhills into his home, expressed his shock. "Having had Jen in our home before, breaking bread with them, and then it turned out that she's responsible for his death. It was shocking, frankly." The December 2025 trial approaches with fundamental questions still unanswered. Can prosecutors prove murder without a body? The recorded confession and physical evidence suggest they can, but Utah law requires proof of corpus delicti, evidence that a crime actually occurred, before a confession can convict. Perhaps the most haunting question is one that may never be fully answered. How does a mother of 3, living in a $1 million home with a respected military husband, decide that murder is preferable to divorce? In her recorded confession, Jennifer Gledhill revealed a mindset that had moved beyond normal human emotion. "Matthew wasn't a person anymore," she said. "He wasn't Matt." Somewhere in northern Utah, in a shallow grave that has eluded dozens of searchers for months, lies the body of Matthew Johnson, a Green Beret, a father, a man whose final mistake was falling asleep in his own bed while his wife plotted his death. The perfect military family of Cottonwood Heights has been destroyed, leaving only questions, grief, and a trial that promises to reveal even more disturbing truths about how a marriage became a murder.